Well, I'm Edgar Gifty Kolibakar, and welcome to Let's Talk Mental Health and Relationship. Today, we're going to be talking about breaking the circle, the effects of trauma and generational patterns. Stay tuned. Today, we are diving into a topic that hits close to home for many people, including me, which is the effects of trauma and generational patterns. We're going to explore how unresolved pain, family dynamics, and learned behaviors can echo through generations, often without even us realizing it, and how awareness and healing can happen, and how it helps us break those circles. Whether you're studying mental health, working in counseling, or reflecting on your own family story, this episode will give you insights and tools to better understand the invisible threats that shape who we are. Understanding trauma and generational patterns. Let's start by first defining what we mean by trauma and generational patterns. Many people may ask, what is trauma or generational patterns? Firstly, trauma isn't just about what happens to us, it's also about what happens inside of us. As a result, it can stem from experiences like abuse, neglect, loss, discrimination, war, or even chronic stress. Intergenerational trauma occurs when the effects of those painful experiences get passed down. This can happen biologically through changes in stress response and psychologically through beliefs, behaviors, and parenting styles. For example, a grandparent who lived through war or systemic oppression may develop hypervigilance or emotional distress as coping mechanisms. Their children and grandchildren may inherit those patterns, perhaps probably becoming anxious, emotionally, guarded, or overly responsible even without knowing where those tendencies begin. The ripple effect, how trauma echoes across generation from grandparents to parents, to grandchildren and all that. So, how does trauma actually travel through generations? That's a good question. There are three main ways, and I'm going to be talking about the three main ways. One is modeling and behavior. Children often learn from what they observe. If a parent suppresses emotion or uses anger as protection, the child internalizes that as a normal way of coping. Two, attachment and emotional regulation. Traumatized parents or caregivers may struggle with emotional attunement. This affects how um, children learn to regulate emotions, or trust others, or form secure relationships later in life, which is very important. The third one is family beliefs and secrets. Sometimes trauma is wrapped in silence, even topics we don't talk about. But just to think, silence itself becomes a teacher. It shapes how families view vulnerability, shame, or resilience. Over time, these patterns form family scripts, unspoken rules about how love, pain, or success are expressed. And unless we pause to reflect, we often repeat what we don't repair. Now, take it back. Unless we pause to reflect, we often repeat what we don't repair. Remember that. Now, talking about recognizing the signs in ourselves. How do we recognize those signs? Breaking cycles begins with awareness, self awareness. You have to be self aware. Now, here are a few signs that generational trauma might be influencing your life. Firstly, we're looking at feeling overly responsible for others. And unless we pause to reflect, We often repeat what we don't repair. Now, take it back. Unless we pause to reflect, we often repeat what we don't repair. Remember that. Now, talking about recognizing the signs in ourselves, how do we recognize those signs? Breaking cycles begins with awareness, self awareness. You have to be self aware. Now, here are some signs that generational trauma might be influencing your life. Firstly, let's look at feeling overly responsible for others' emotions. I tend to do that sometimes. I realize I've done a lot of reflection and I've realized that this is something that I had and I'm still working on. I used to feel overly responsible for others' emotion, like whether they're feeling sad, angry. I just carry the burden of others, forgetting my own emotions. And I tend to want to help others more than I even help myself. I'm not saying that is wrong. However, you can forget yourself in the process of helping others. Second one is struggling with boundaries or people pleasing. I think if you can be honest with yourself, majority of us suffer from people pleasing. We suffer with setting boundaries for ourselves. You can love someone and also have your personal boundaries. That sets the standard for how you're going to be treated. That sets the standard for how you allow people to treat and respect you. People pleasing has its good and bad side. You tend to please others more, and sometimes it results in ungratefulness from that person. Naturally, most people are ungrateful. No matter how much or how far you go for them, they will never tend to be satisfied. You are not there to help them. They take you to be the worst person ever. I'm going to repeat that again. Feeling anxious when things are calm because chaos feels normal to us because it's a generational pattern. It's a traumatic experience for most family. Living in chaos. So you're always anxious as a child. You're always anxious as a mother. You're always anxious as a father. You're always anxious as a grandparent. It's inherited. The second to the last sign is repeating toxic relationship dynamics despite wanting different outcomes. And we see that in most of the families nowadays. For example, how do you recognize this sign? By repeating toxic relationship dynamics despite wanting different outcomes. If your parents divorce, nobody, no child growing up ever prayed to get a divorce from their partner. Everyone decides to get married to last, to be together forever. We imagine ourselves growing old with our partners. So if your parents divorce, or let's take it back to the grandparents, if your grandparents got a divorce, when your grandparents had your parents and their siblings, your parents got a divorce, and then their siblings or some of their siblings got a divorce. Now your parents have you and your siblings. You've reached the age to get married and settle down. You notice that some of your siblings got a divorce also, or you are having marital issues, you are having marital problems, and now it's kind of leading to that path of divorce. That's a generational pattern. And lastly, having a strong sense of guilt or shame that doesn't quite fit your own story. Can you imagine having a strong sense of guilt or shame that doesn't fit your own story? How can you have a strong sense of guilt or shame that doesn't fit your story. You don't remember, or you haven't done anything to really have or experience that feeling of guilt and shame, yet you are experiencing the sense of guilt and the sense of shame. But it doesn't fit the pieces of your story because it has been passed down to you. So you feel that family a burden of guilt and shame. You are experiencing it too as the result of your parents' action or their parents' action or great grandparents' action. Now, recognizing these patterns isn't about blaming our families. I'm not saying this to tell us that we should blame our families. It's about understanding them. Compassion, not criticism, creates space for healing. We should have compassion towards our family. It's not your fault that these things are happening. It's also the trauma that they have experienced throughout their lives. Growing up, they didn't know how to heal, how to properly heal themselves, how to properly seek help, professional help. Heal themselves at the same time, giving all of their energies to the children. And now we don't understand what they're going through internally. Don't blame them for that. That should give you the idea that this is not my parents' fault. This is not my parents' fault. This is not my fault. So we should come together and seek professional help. Help each other. Stand with each other. Grow together. Do a lot of reflection and journaling. Self awareness. Seek different ways together to heal. And not just heal, but heal properly. So you can be a better person for your future children. So that generational pattern cannot be passed down from you to your children because you have not recognized your family's generational pattern and the trauma. And you don't want your future children and your children to endure that, to go through that. So when you're seeking help, the idea about seeking help is not for yourself, but for the people, for the children you're going to bring on earth, for others around you. It's not just for yourself, it's for the people you love. We're going to be talking about healing and breaking down the circle. Healing intergenerational trauma takes time. It's not just a 1 day thing or 5 minutes thing. It takes time, but it is possible. There are a few steps you can look at. First one is awareness and reflection. We have to do a lot of reflection on your behavior, your actions, your past, your present, and self awareness. Tools like genograms, journaling, as I mentioned earlier, um, therapy help us map our family patterns and make sense. It help us make sense of them. Most people, especially from my country, Liberia. Originally, I'm from Liberia. I don't think most people know what genogram is. I don't think most people from Liberia knows how effective genogram is. It's how you break down family patterns, religion, political views, a relationship. It helps you realize the things that your family do together that that bond you. Those things that you see yourself doing with your family that unites you, or the common interests your family has, the common views your family has. And it helps you realize where, in particular, you need help in your family, the weaknesses, the strength of your family. Two, the second step is therapeutic support, counseling modalities like family systems therapy, EMDR, somatic experiencing, or CBT can help process traumatic safety. The third one is new narratives. We can choose to rewrite our story, to replace silence with openness, shame with compassion, and fear with understanding. Four, community and connection. Oh, this is very important. Healing often happens in relationship with friends, support groups, faith communities, or mentors who model healthy connections. When one person heals, it changes an entire family line because that person might be a positive influence to the rest of the family without even them knowing. That person subconsciously might bring the rest of the family to that safe space they are, that healthy space they are. It takes time. It takes a lot of steps. It takes a lot of processes. It takes a lot of work from your part, from my part. And it takes a lot of self awareness and reflection. Generational trauma doesn't define who we are, it just tells us where to begin. Where can we begin? Where do I start from? Your trauma doesn't define who you are. It's not who you are. It's part of your experiences, but it's not who you are as a person. It tells you where you can't begin by facing the pain that's been passed down. We do not only honor those who come before us, but we also create a new legacy for those who come after our children, our grandchildren. So, if this episode resonates with you, take a moment today to reflect on your family story. What patterns do you want to keep? Because every family has its good or bad side. Every family has good things happening, bad things happening. But what do you want to keep? What do you want to reflect on? Most people, the mistake most people make is to continually reflect on the negative aspect, the negative part of the family, the bad things that keep happening in our family, and then they identify themselves as their family's problem or their problem. You are not your problem. You are not your trauma. You are not your family's trauma. You are not your family's problem. Reflect on your family story. What patterns do you want to keep? What patterns do you want to let go of? Are you willing to release? Thank you for the opportunity you've given me to share with you some of the things that I think it's important to know in today's society. Some of the things that really affect our mental health. And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, please remember healing is generational too. Thank you.